Well, good afternoon, and you join me on my annual read-through, The Lord of the Rings, the annual literary pilgrimage I make through Tolkien's great novel. And today I've been reading Chapter 2 of The Fellowship of the Ring. That's the Shadow of the Past. Really important chapter where Gandalf lays out for Frodo the story of the ring, what we know of the One Ring so far. In fact, they haven't quite yet worked out that it is probably the One Ring, although Gandalf has his suspicions, and they're going to be confirmed in this chapter. But there's a very important speech in the middle of this chapter where Gandalf has been laying out for Frodo, particularly the story of Gollum. So Gollum is one of the sort of protagonists of Lord of the Rings, this kind of evil, subhuman's the wrong word, sub-hobbit creature. He's a corrupted hobbit. The ring has corrupted him. He was once one of the river folk, a kind of hobbit creature. His name was Smeagol, and he gets hold of the ring, and it just utterly corrupts him. And so Gandalf lays this out, and then comes this moment where Frodo is told. Gandalf describes to Frodo how Bilbo had this opportunity to kill Gollum many years before, and didn't. And so Frodo says, "But this is terrible. This is terrible," cried Frodo. "Far worse than the worst that I'd imagined from your hints and warnings. Oh, Gandalf, best of friends, what am I to do? For now I am really afraid. What am I to do? What a pity. What a pity that Bilbo did not stab that vile creature when he had a chance." And then Gandalf says, "Pity? It was pity that stayed his hand. Pity and mercy. Not to strike without need, and he has been well rewarded, Frodo. Be sure that he took so little hurt from the evil and escaped in the end, because he began his ownership of the ring so, with pity." That line is fascinating, isn't it? Gandalf implying that if Bilbo had done the easy thing, when he first got hold of the ring, he'd used it to become invisible and then had stabbed Gollum and killed him, it would have begun in this naked grasp of power, and the ring would have got hold of that and twisted it straight away. But right at the beginning, Bilbo's hobbit nature, his hobbit sense kind of came through, and he didn't do that, and thus things did not go as badly wrong as they could. I'm sorry," said Frodo, "but I am frightened. I do not feel any pity for Gollum." "You have not seen him," Gandalf broke in. "No, and I don't want to," said Frodo. I can't understand you. Do you mean to say that you and the elves have let him live on after all those horrible deeds? Now, at any rate, he is as bad as an orc, and just an enemy. He deserves death." "Deserves it? Dare say he does. Many that live deserve death, and some that die deserve life. Can you give it to them? Then do not be so too eager to deal out death in judgment, for even the very wise cannot see all ends. I have not much hope that Gollum can be cured before he dies, but there is a chance of it, and he is bound up with the fate of the ring. My heart tells me that he has some part to play yet, for good or ill, before the end, and when that comes, the pity of Bilbo may rule the fate of many, yours not least. In any case, we did not kill him. He is very old and very wretched. The wood elves have him in prison, but they treat him with such kindness as they can find in their wise hearts." All the same," said Frodo, "even if Bilbo could not kill Gollum, I wish he had not kept the ring. I wish he had never found it, and that I had not got it. Why did you let me keep it? Why didn't you make me throw it away or destroy it?" "Let you? Make you?" said the wizard. "Have you not been listening to all that I have said? You are not thinking of what you are saying. But as for throwing it away, well, that was obviously wrong. These rings have a way of being found. In evil hands, it might have done great evil. Worst of all, might have fallen into the hands of the enemy. Indeed, it certainly would, for this is the one, and he is exerting all of his power to find it or draw it to himself." Anyway, so many things we could say here. What I'm fascinated by in that little section, and there's a little bit earlier I want to read to you in a moment as well, it's the whole theme of providence in Lord of the Rings. Because one of the questions that sometimes occurs to people when they read Lord of the Rings is, look, Tolkien was a deeply committed Christian, deeply committed Christian, and there are lots and lots of Christian themes, religious themes, in the book. But where is God? God is not directly mentioned in the Lord of the Rings. He's certainly there, actually, in some ways, in the Silmarillion, the greater epic legendarium, sort of the founding document of Tolkien's legendarium that he then gets finished later. Very much there, the creation of the world, for example. But in Lord of the Rings, God's not mentioned. What is going on? Well, the thing is, he is there. He is there, and he's there through the theme of providence. And providence is the idea that things that happen don't happen by accident. There is a controlling hand behind them. And Christians like myself believe this world is not an accident. Things don't just happen just by chance. Sometimes they do. If I throw this book out of my hand, it might land over here, it might land over there. Chance. Toss a coin, chance. Chance happens. But there are also other forces at work in the world. As human beings, we can interact in the world, make choices and decisions, and so on. But actually, when it comes to God, yes, God is at work in the world, sometimes directly, sometimes behind the scenes. And let me read you something. I mentioned in my previous video this wonderful book by Peter Kreeft, the philosopher and lover of Tolkien, The Philosophy of Tolkien, the worldview behind Lord of the Rings. And there's a lovely little phrase in here, paragraph in here, where Kreeft is discussing this theme. And he says, look, in the Lord of the Rings, there are literally hundreds of providential coincidences. He puts coincidences in quote marks. They are not a preachy, contrived, unbelievable, forced or allegorical element. They are not a jimmying of the plot, as in some pious Christian novels. He said, actually, this narrative credibility, this naturalness, is itself a strong argument for the truth of the doctrine of providence. It is true to life. It is one of the ways in which literature can persuade us more powerfully than logic. And Kreeft is saying a couple of things there. Firstly, that actually, rather than Tolkien just come out and go, God's in control, bang, here he acts directly, you might as a reader go, that's all right, but that's not my everyday experience, or if I'm not a Christian, not convinced by this. But as Tolkien illustrates through the story of the book, that there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times where just things seem to happen in such a coincidental way, you have to decide there is a bigger hand behind the story. And one of them is what we just talked about. So Bilbo could have killed Gollum. He could have done it easily. He had the ring. He grabs the ring in the Riddles in the Dark chapter in The Hobbit. He puts it on. It becomes invisible. Clobbers Gollum over the head. Job done. But then so many things would go wrong from that point, because if you know the Lord of the Rings, and I'm sorry if you don't, slight spoiler here, Gollum is going to become instrumental at the end of the story when it comes to the destruction of the ring, at the cracks of doom, at the end of the Return of the King. Gollum plays a key role in that. And if Gollum had been killed many years before, he wouldn't be there to do that, and potentially the ring would not be destroyed. So interestingly, pity, it's not just that pity kind of held Bilbo's hand back. When you read the whole of the Lord of the Rings, Gandalf is making the point here, pity saves the entire world. Because if Bilbo hadn't shown pity, Gollum would have died. Gollum couldn't have then be involved in the destruction of the ring. So pity is literally crucial to the entire story. Now, Bilbo couldn't know that, but God knew that and was there behind the scenes. And we see that elsewhere, by the way, in the story. When it comes to how Bilbo gets his hand on the ring, a couple of pages earlier from where I was reading to you moments ago, we have this little phrase when they're discussing how it is that the ring came to Bilbo. How did Bilbo get it in the first place? Bilbo's scrabbling around in the dark in the tunnels under the Misty Mountains and comes upon the ring, which Gollum has, again, in quote marks, accidentally dropped. And Gandalf says this to Frodo. He says, there was more than one power at work, Frodo. More than one power at work. The ring was trying to get back to its master. It had slipped from Isildur's hand and betrayed him. That was the king of Gondor much earlier, who had cut the ring from Sauron's hand, and then rather than destroy it, taken it for himself. And of course the ring and eventually killed him and betrayed him. Then when a chance came, it caught poor Deagle, and he was murdered by Smeagol, who becomes Gollum. And after that, Gollum, and it had devoured him. It could make no further use of him. He was too small and too mean, and as long as it stayed with him, he would never leave his deep pool again. So now, when its master was awake once more and sending out his dark thought from Mirkwood, it abandoned Gollum, only to be picked up by the most unlikely person imaginable, Bilbo from the Shire. Behind that, there was something else at work, beyond any design of the ringmaker. I can put it no plainer than by saying that Bilbo was meant to find the ring, and not by its maker. In which case, you were meant to have it. And that may be an encouraging thought. And I would suggest to you, again, that's Tolkien's philosophy of life, his theology coming through in a massive way there. that, yeah, it may look like all is chaos, but there is a divine hand working through the story of Lord of the Rings in hundreds of places. And of course, Tolkien would say, yeah, that's what we experience too, that there are, in one sense, not just that, well, not, I was going to say no accidents, there are not just accidents. And Christians like myself would often say that it's amazing how many times when we pray that actually, coincidences happen, things come together in a way they don't otherwise. And the same here, Tolkien is weaving that theme for you into Lord of the Rings. And part of the reason he's doing that, Tolkien wants to re-enchant and re-wander us. We live in an age where we've been, there's lots of language. The language of disenchantment is everywhere, isn't it? That we live in an age where, our ancestors, and in fact large parts of the world today outside the West, have believed that the world is not just a world of atoms and blind forces, but there's a supernatural realm as well. And the supernatural realm up here and the physical realm, as it were, down here, they interact. They're porous between those things. But in the West, certainly perhaps for the last 100 years or so, we've been living not in a two-story world. We've got rid of the upstairs. We're living in a bungalow, but we keep banging our heads on the ceiling, because we're wired to look for things like meaning and purpose and a bigger story. We're wired to find things like art and literature and poetry. They're supposed to move us and connect us to those bigger things, but we're cut off from them. We wonder what's going on. And along comes Tolkien and writes Lord of the Rings. And one reason, not the only one, but one reason he wrote that book, I think, is to re-enchant and re-wander us and go, maybe, just maybe, there's a bigger story here. In fact, there's a bigger story here. And this is why when we read Lord of the Rings, those themes resonate with us. So when you read Lord of the Rings through, look for those examples of providence where strange coincidences happen. There are so many of them, hundreds of them. We've talked about a couple: Bilbo's finding of the ring, Bilbo not killing Gollum when he had the chance. Lots of other timing coincidences. We're shortly, in a few chapters' time, we're going to be in Bree, where we're going to meet Strider. And the fact that Strider and the hobbits end up in the right place at the right time together is a huge coincidence. Rivendell is really interesting. When you come to the middle of the Fellowship of the Ring, and we have the great Council of Elrond, listen to what all of the travellers there at that council say. They didn't plan to get there on a certain date at a certain time. They all found their way there by different routes and different means, but somehow they're all there at the right time, at the right moment, for that great council to happen and decide what's going to happen to the ring. And there are so many of those kind of examples across Lord of the Rings. So look out for them, and I hope it adds a level to the book that you will enjoy it in a whole new way. And like I say, I'm always intrigued when I read Lord of the Rings, looking for things I haven't seen before. And this is about my 20th read through the book, and I'm seeing things I haven't seen before. So that's chapter 2. Fellowship of the Ring, Shadow of the Past. Hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.